to speak for a few moments, and I think maybe I'll speak for a little more than a few moments, so just a little more. I just want to thank you all for being here. It means such a great deal to me and others from our community to be able to celebrate together, to support our community together, to particularly celebrate this important new chapter that we're beginning. It means a great deal to me personally to be in the same room with so many people who I have such a wonderful, important, powerful, loving history with in so many different ways. I particularly want to thank Aviva.
I'm here now.
Aviva truly for making today possible, which means making what we are as a community possible. I said at a recent board meeting for helping us become an adult community, an adult congregation in many ways. So I just want to say a few words. I am someone who believes very strongly in strategic planning. And I will also say that there has been nothing strategic about my rabbinical career. When I was growing up, my Hebrew school friends, who many of whom I'm still friends with, will attest, I was not most likely to become a rabbi when I was a kid. And when I went to rabbinical school, I swore up and down that I would never be a congregational rabbi. I thought congregations were these hopelessly middle-class places where life was very comfy and comfortable Jews went to feel more comfortable about their lives. And I did different things when I was in rabbinical school, none of which was particularly fulfilling. And Allie, who is going to be a through line through many of my comments, was the one who said, you know, why don't you take a congregation? It kind of seems like you're pretty miserable doing everything else. It was my last year of rabbinical school, and I took a student congregation in New Jersey, and I really loved it. I loved so much about the work. I loved the multifaceted nature of it. I loved working with adults and with kids. I loved the community building and the community organizing. I loved the educational work. It gave me a glimpse of what congregations could be. And in the end, that's the only kind of rabbi I've ever been. And I do think that congregations are not without their issues and their problems, and I think we're past the era of the dominance of Jewish congregations, but I still think they have a very important place in the Jewish world. When we moved here to the Chicago area, I decided that I would be the kind of rabbi. I didn't really decide this. This was just, it was basic to my own approach to the work, was that who I was the kind of rabbi I would be. And there are some rabbis who kind of play the part of the rabbi and are themselves in their private lives, and I just didn't know how to do that. I only knew how to do this by putting myself into this work, and that was for better and for worse. It's important to keep boundaries, and I'm always aware of that, but I didn't know any other way. I believe very strongly in keeping it real. And that's why when I was struggling with the issue of Israel-Palestine, that the only way I knew how to do that was to do that publicly, and to do it as part of the community. And in my former congregation at JRC, that's what happened. I'd been there about 10 years by that point, and it was in many ways very naive to think I could do that indefinitely with no drawback. But we did manage, I think, for a brief but significant amount of time to make it work until it didn't work anymore. And it was painful. It was enormously painful to leave that congregation. I'd been there for 16 years at that point, under duress. And I didn't think at that point I would be a congregational rabbi anymore. It was pretty clear that I wouldn't. And AFSC, as Jennifer mentioned, was what gave me a new avenue and reminded me that there are many ways to be a rabbi, and that I was part of a much larger community than just the Jewish community. I was part of a community of conscience and had been for many years, and continued to do that role. As a rabbi, but also as a part of the Palestine Solidarity community. Starting Tzedek Chicago was also not particularly strategic. There was a number of us who were getting together informally to do Jewish things, to do Shabbat, to the holidays, very memorably. And I will never forget the day that Susan Kronsky said they just wanted to have lunch with me, and it was just a few doors down from where I worked in the South Loop. Acme's used to be in the South Loop, it's not there anymore, but they took me out to lunch there, and they said, and they were part of this community that we were creating, and they said, we think we have to make it into a congregation here, and we think we should be the rabbi. That was pretty much what they said. And, it was, I also remember Mark saying something to the effect of, you really were born to be a congregational rabbi, you need a congregation. So, the beginning of Tzedek Chicago in 2015 was just emerged organically out of this world. It was in the wake of Israel's assault on Gaza in 2014. There were more and more Jews who were looking for a Jewish community that was constant with their values, and it gave me an opportunity to be a new kind of rabbi. And I worked at AFSC full-time and helped start Tzedek Chicago part-time until I couldn't work at AFSC full-time anymore because Tzedek Chicago grew to the point that I had the blessing to take it over full-time. There's a reason I chose Alyssa, Beth, and Jennifer to speak, because the three of them were present in important parts of my life as a rabbi, as a human being. Alyssa mentioned some of it already. I was going through my struggles at JRC, really doubting not only issues of the current government and the quote-unquote occupation, but really struggling with Zionism itself. And I read about this rabbinical student who was spending her Israel year in the West Bank doing human rights watch work, and started a blog called the Palestinian Talmud. And I just cold called this person, Aviva Weiss, and we had a long conversation in which she probably asked me more questions than I asked of her, the organizer. And it really gave me, at that time, an idea that I could continue to be a Jew and continue to be a rabbi while being true to my values. And she showed that to me it was possible. Jennifer, who was a longtime dear friend and comrade in the local community here, while things were going really south in my former congregation, and I knew that I probably wasn't going to last, she just called me up one day and said, and she had no idea that any of this was going on, and said, we've been doing a search for a Midwest regional director. Their previous director, Michael McConnell, with blessed memory, had died, who was an icon in the justice community in Chicago. And she said, I remember I was sitting right on this phone call. She said, whenever the staff sits around and brainstorms who we'd like to see in this position, your name always comes up, and I had no idea if this is even remotely what we'd be interested in doing, or if this is crazy. But that was the phone call that came at a moment that just gave me an opportunity to glimpse the future for myself. So I'm deeply indebted to Jennifer as well for that. And we used to joke that I was technically her boss, but she was in many ways my teacher in so many ways. Not least of which was how to maneuver through the world of Quakerism. So and Beth, it's kind of where's Beth? Beth was a through line, as she mentioned. I remember as a kid, I remember her son, and I know her family well. Her father was one of the people who took me out to lunch that day, and watched her grow up to be such an important, amazing Jewish leader. And so many of that generation of JSU that I was talking about have grown up to be amazing, important leaders on this issue and on many other issues of social justice in their own right. And just the thought that I know has some small piece to do with that, when I hear from them, means a great deal to me. And now, it's certainly becomes complete because Beth is my teacher as well. I mean, whenever I need a conversation about the power of political advocacy and how on earth we make sense out of Congress and how do we lobby them, and is this a force for change in the world? How can this possibly be a force for change in the world? Beth is the one who shows me how that is possible. The fact that I became a rabbi in order to be the kind of teacher that were important to me in my life, and that I could be a teacher for people who now in turn become my teacher as well, is an enormously humbling and powerful and sacred thing. Through all of it, I really want to say that Howie has been there in the start. My partner, my guide, my teacher as well, my partner in crime. She knows me better than anyone in the world. She knows the good, the bad, and the messy of me. But none of this would be possible, and none of it would be in any way meaningful without her by my side. And so I'm deeply indebted to my partner. I don't watch the Academy Awards anymore, but I do kind of watch the YouTube videos from some people, and I was really excited that Amy Madigan won. And when she said to her husband, Ed Harris, that none of this would be possible without you by my side, that really touched me and resonated with me. I want to finish by just offering a little piece of Torah that has been my kind of rabbinic credo. I used to have it on my wall in my old office, and it disappeared. I don't know what happened to the little framed picture of it, but it's a very famous quote from Rabbi Hillel from Pirkei Avot, the picks of the sages. And it's a quote from Rabbi Hillel who says, "Be a student of Aaron. Love peace and pursue peace. Love people and bring them close to Torah." And why I always love that quote is because, well, first of all, Hillel was known as being a peacemaker, and Aaron was kind of the quintessential peacemaker, not in the Bible, but in rabbinic imagination. He was the one who brought people together. And it says, love peace and pursue peace. In other words, you can love peace, but it doesn't matter at all unless you're constantly in pursuit of it, because peace isn't handed to you on a golden platter. You need to be a rodef shalom, ohev shalom, a rodef shalom. That is elusive, and it takes great effort to be constantly in pursuit of it. And then he says, love people and bring them close to Torah. First of all, he doesn't say love Jews, he says love people. And I think that's really key. I think you can't do this work unless you love people. That means the people who are in your life, that means the people you don't know, that means the people in your community, that means people in other communities. It means people who you are socialized to fear and even to hate. that none of this works and none of it makes sense unless your starting point is loving people. And then it says, bring them close to Torah. And I've always been fascinated that it's not the opposite. It's not love Torah and bring people close to it. In other words, it's not bring people to your agenda. It's not teaching, education, and organizing and all of this community building work. It doesn't start with your vision and getting people to fall in line with your vision. It's about loving them and bringing them close to Torah and finding out together what that means. And I define Torah as not just those 5 books and not just Jewish wisdom, but Torah is learning and wisdom writ large. And so it's always been I think this is a rabbinic model of mine that you can't do this work unless you love people. People make me crazy, people make me in so many ways, but it has to be out of a place of love, first and foremost. And it's not just a rabbinic credo for me, I think it's for all of us a way of living. And wherever I go from this time forward, it's going to be with people I love, both those in this room, many who are not here, and many I get to meet. I'm just looking forward to being part of that chapter of